Good afternoon. It is a great pleasure for me to talk to you about the recent work we have been doing together with George Park and Sebastian Baltes in the field of age and software development. On the one hand, we all know highly successful software developers of any age. For example, this is Masakova Kamiya. She is an app developer and she is 84 years old. We also know from the previous study by Patrick Morrison and Emerson that programmer reputation scores on Stack Overflow increase relative to age well into the 50s, and that there is not a strong correlation between age and scores in specific knowledge areas related to more or less modern technology. At the same time, popular question and answer website Quora is full with questions of people wondering whether they are too old to start programming, to become a software developer. And those questions are coming from people of any age, 60, 50, 30, and even at the age of 15, people wonder whether they are too old to start learning code. So we wanted to understand what is going on. We wanted to understand the public discourse which connects age and youth in particular to software development. And this despite the fact that there exist highly successful software developers of any age. To answer this question, we have started by querying Google. We have focused on keywords, age, and software developer. We have restricted our attention to texts published in English, and we have opted for location, United States. The reasons for this choice are the fact that English is a dominant language in software development, and we did not want to consider cultural aspects that are highly likely to influence perception of age, and in particular perception of older software developers. We have identified 100 topmost hits. Among those hits, we have excluded job advertisement and website and texts which are merely collections of statistics without much of added editorial content. We have also excluded forum posts. We focused on texts which have been published on popular blog platforms such as Medium and published on news websites such as TechCrunch. In this way, we have identified 24 articles that have been used as a basis for the follow-up study. Among those 24 articles, the three authors have read every single paragraph and perform an open coding in order to identify the topics being discussed in those articles. It turned out that the major issue which has been discussed is the topic of employability. To get additional insights in employability, two of the authors have again reread the 24 articles, this time focusing on employability strategies, on things that individuals or companies can do to either hinder employment of older software developers or to support the older software developers. Finally, for each one of the articles we have identified, we have checked whether it has been discussed on Hacker News and what do developers think about the opinions indicated in those articles. Based on this process, we have constructed a mind map. The mind map summarizes the findings both as related to the individuals and as related to the companies. So let us start from the lower part of the mind map. In the lower part of the mind map, we see two large categories: growing as a software engineer and changing the work environment. The most often repeated recommendation in the growing as a software engineer category calls older software developers to master modern technologies. In fact, this is the most popular recommendation across all categories we have considered. However, the previous study by Morrison and Murphy-Hill has found that there are not many differences in terms of mastering modern technologies among more junior and more senior, among younger and older developers. Moreover, it turned out that this recommendation is experienced as controversial by developers on Hacker News. While some commenters indeed stress the importance of keeping the knowledge up to date, some others stress that learning technology on its own cannot counter the cultural mismatch. Moreover, there are lots of skills which are going far beyond the technological ones. The green group of strategies is related to changing the work environment. For instance, transitioning to management, transitioning to consultancy, or even starting one's own company. This topic seems to be less controversial for our Hacker News commenters. Many of them see transition to management as a viable way of preserving employability. Both the category of growing as a software engineer and changing the work environment have been studied before in the scientific literature. This is, however, not the case for the following two categories. On the left, we see the group of recommendations which are related to adapting expectations. And the most troublesome part within this category is that adapting expectations often means lowering expectations. Essentially accepting that you are old and being ready to accept lower level job types, lower salaries, or maybe less interesting locations. This is deeply problematic. Essentially, it indicates that older software developers are competing on less favorable conditions than their younger peers. An even more problematic group of employment strategies is on the right, is presented in yellow. Those strategies call older software developers to hide their age and appear young, either by looking young, for instance, modifying CV or even recommending a plastic surgery, or by adopting patterns of useful behavior, such as working overtime or working during the weekends. Clearly, those working patterns can conflict with other obligations that older software developers might have. For example, family. What is also interesting is that among the articles we have studied, several have recommended strategies for companies rather than for individuals. Unfortunately, most of those strategies are negative, meaning that if a company employs those strategies, older software developers are less likely to be hired or less likely to stay employed. And those negative strategies cover the entire spectrum, ranging from language of job postings to interview process, which is geared towards younger graduates. More positive strategies would be, for instance, to offer returnships, meaning special programs for software developers coming back to the field after a career break. And of course, this would also indicate that a company values a combination of experience and talent rather than considering experience as merely technological baggage. So all those strategies have been designed for older software developers. One might wonder, however, what does older software developer mean, or how old is old? It is quite disturbing that 4 among 24 articles we have studied consider the threshold of 30. So individuals older than 30 are considered to be old software developers. The majority of articles considered the threshold on 40. So essentially, as a software developer, your expiration date is around 40. So what have we done? We have started by observing that there is a recurrent link between youth and software development. People as young as 15 wonder on Quora whether they are too old to start learning code. To try and understand how popular media portrays the relation between age and software development, we have analyzed 24 articles derived from 100 topmost hits, and we have observed that employability is the major topic being discussed. The articles we have analyzed offer a plethora of recommendations which are supposed to support older software developers as well as companies interested in employing them. However, those recommendations range from quite accepted ones, such as transitioning to management, to controversial ones, such as mastering new technologies, to profoundly problematic ones, such as adopting useful patterns of behavior, modifying CV, or performing plastic surgery. And on top of all this, those recommendations, those strategies pertain to a relatively young population. So the majority of our articles has considered developers aged 40 or older as old, which is of course far, far away from retirement age in most industrialized countries. Thank you very much for your attention. This was a joint work with George Park and Sebastian Baltas, and you can find the preprint of this article to appear in IEEE software on the website below.